Hey there, my name is Pastor Travis. I'm the lead pastor here at Canvas SF, and I'm just so honored that you would watch our teaching here online or on the Canvas app. Wherever you are, I just want you to know that you were created to create, you were imagined to imagine, and one thing that just keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning is seeing you step in rhythm with the fully alive life that you were created for. You were not created to exist, you were created to be fully alive. As a matter of fact, that's why we exist as a church, to point creatives to their Creator that they would become fully alive followers of Jesus. And so my heart is that this teaching will empower you and inspire you to be the creator you were always created to be as you pursue the fully alive life of Jesus. Let's watch together. So I learned something interesting this week, something that I had not known before, and it's bizarre, so you're just gonna have to kind of go with me. The Europeans had some pretty ingenious forms of torture that they implemented in the Middle Ages. Some of you are like, why are you reading about Middle Age forms of torture? Don't you just pray and read the Bible? I don't know why I was reading about this, but I read about it. And it's not just soccer that the Europeans torture us with, but wow, okay, some soccer fans, all right. But in the Middle Ages, they actually had far worse forms of torture than soccer. They were barbaric, they were sadistic forms of torture. One of them, they would actually, and not to make you uncomfortable, but they would actually take their victim and they would tie horses on ropes and the ropes to the limbs of the victim. So their arm would be attached to one horse, their other arm would be attached to another horse, and each of their legs would be attached to separate horses. And then there would be 4 horsemen that would be released and they would pull their victim apart. Welcome to church at Canvas, everybody. Now, what's interesting about this form of torture is that the French had a name for this form of torture, and the name for this particular form of torture is distraction. Everyone say distraction. This picture of someone being pulled in 4 different directions until eventually they were completely torn apart. They called it distraction. And when I heard this alongside the text I'm going to teach on today, I felt like God gave me a message that is for us today if we are going to be more rooted in 2019 than ever before. And so here's the title of the sermon if you're taking notes today. It is Death by Distraction. Death by Distraction. Are you easily distracted? Anybody in the room? I'm not easily distracted at all. Hey, Monica, how you doing? We should get coffee after service. Anyways, I'm not easily distracted. I pride myself on my ability to stay focused. Even when dogs start barking in the service, we love dogs. I'm just playing. But if it was a cat, I would say different things. But I pride myself on being focus. I try my best to be focused, but it's hard to be focused in an age of distraction where literally you can fit every piece of information on the known planet in your pocket. We live in an age of distraction, and what I want to talk about today is how Jesus seems to believe that one of the primary killers of rootedness in the lives of people is distraction. It's death by distraction. It's when we begin to live our lives being pulled in 4 different directions until eventually we feel utterly and totally torn apart. It's death by distraction, and it may very well be one of the primary things keeping you from going deep in your relationship with Jesus and being rooted the way that you were created to be. I wonder how many things, if we're honest with ourselves, have died in our life, and they've died because you were too distracted to see them coming. I wonder how many moments we've missed with others simply because we are too distracted. Often we'll come into a place like this, listen to a person like me, and we'll come in here expecting and believing and hoping and praying that God will bless us. But what if that's the wrong prayer? What if you need to stop asking God to bless you and instead you need to ask God to focus you because God has already blessed you, and maybe the problem is not that He's not blessing you, the problem is you're too distracted to see the blessings that have been in front of you the entire time. It's death by distraction. In John chapter 10, verse 10, Jesus, he's talking about an enemy that seeks to destroy humanity. He seeks to destroy your humanity. He seeks to destroy your future. And Jesus says this thief, this enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy. But the thief doesn't destroy you at gunpoint. The thief doesn't jump out from behind a wall and mug you, but he will often destroy you with distraction. Elbow the person next to you and say, the distractions are killing you. The distractions are killing you. See, for some of you, the distractions are killing your focus. For some of you, the distractions are killing your career. For some of you, the distractions are killing your marriage. It's killing your ability to have a meaningful relationship with somebody else. For some of you, the distractions are killing your peace. For some of you, the distractions are killing your joy. For some of you, the distractions are killing what could have been, what might have been. Come on, have you ever felt distracted? If you felt distracted, give me like a I've been distracted. We've all been distracted. Sometimes I'll be speaking here on a Sunday morning and I'll just get distracted by the looks on some of your faces. Like I'll be here teaching and I think I'm bringing it home, but you're like this. And I'm like, they ain't feeling it right now. The worst, are you serious right now? Are you kidding me? Speaking of distraction. See, now what I want you to know is I completely staged that phone call because I just wanted to give you a picture of how we live in a time where there's so much noise, so much distraction. Sometimes I feel like I'm being pulled in 4 different directions. And you know what's even worse is when you are being pulled in 4 different directions and all 4 directions are good. So I want to be a good dad, and I want to be a good husband, and I want to be present for my family, but I got a sermon I need to write for Sunday. I want to have time to pray, and I want to have time to rest, but there's so much work that seems to always need to be done. Don't you wish there was like a do not disturb button in life that you could just like on your iPhone, you could just whoop and do not disturb. So you're going in on Monday and you're just not feeling it right now. Your boss starts talking to you. You're like, do not disturb. That would be amazing, right? As much as I love my baby girl, Finley, sometimes I wish there was a do not disturb button on her forehead that I could just be like, yep, you know? Because it's like, I love you, Finley. I will go to the ends of the earth for you, Finley. But no, baby girl, if I hear baby shark one more time, I'm going to make sushi out of that shark. I'm going to lose my mind. Distractions. And so if we're going to be rooted in our lives, we need to find a way to put a death to distraction before distractions put a death to the destiny that God has called and wired you for. And fortunately for us, Jesus taught on distractions in Matthew chapter 13. A story that if you've been in a place like this before, maybe you've heard it before. It's a common story, but perhaps we'll see it in a new light today. Jesus in Matthew 13, verse 1 says this, later that same day, Jesus left the house and sat beside the lake. A large crowd soon gathered around him, so he got into a boat. And then he sat there and taught as the people stood on the shore. He told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Jesus said, listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. And as he scattered them across his field. Now, I got to pause here because I love this image that Jesus puts in front of our minds right now. It's an image of a farmer that's scattering seed. He's just scattering seed all throughout the field. This is a good picture for how maybe some of us feel about our lives currently right now. You're just scattering seed. You're scattering a little bit in your marriage, scattering a little bit in your relationships, trying to scatter a little more in your job. You're scattering seed in hobbies. You're scattering seed trying to pursue the dreams that you've had for so long. You're just feeling scattered. Have you ever felt scattered in your life before? See, Jesus, when he tells these parables, he always tells these parables to do one of 2 things, or maybe both, to tell us what God is like and to tell us what we are like. To tell us the truth about God and to tell us the truth about us. And so there's this picture of a farmer who's scattering. He's just scattering seed. It says some seeds fell on a footpath and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow. But the plants soon wilted under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, everyone say deep roots. Deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among thorns. They grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. And a few verses later, just like Jesus has to do frequently with his disciples, he has to explain what the story he just told is actually about, which makes me feel a little better, because have you ever read the Bible and everyone else seems to be getting it, but you're reading it and you're like, I don't get it. I don't understand. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. You're in good company. I've been there, you've been there, and apparently his disciples were there frequently. Jesus explains the story. He says, now listen to the explanation of the parable about the farmer planting seeds. A seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. The seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. But since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing God's word. The seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth, so no fruit is produced. The seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as had been planted. Now, I've heard this sermon or this parable from Jesus countless amount of times in sermon after sermon and after sermon, and I can say easily 95% of the sermons I've heard taught on this particular parable of Jesus always explains that the four soils represent four different kinds of people. So you have some people, they're like the soil that was the footpath, that the seed that God planted didn't really get beneath the surface. And then there's some people, they get a little bit beneath the surface, but not very much. And when the sun comes out, they get scorched. And then some people, they're the rocky soil. They just are consumed by the things of this world. And so God's love and hope and future never really fully take root. And then some people, they're the good soil. And I always love it. Everyone thinks they're the good soil, but they're like sitting next to someone like, they're obviously the bad soil, but not me. I'm good soil right now. It's funny how that works. But I've been wondering in reflection on this passage, I've been wondering if this is not so much a description of four different categories of people, as much as a description of four different conditions of our heart at any given time. I wonder if it's not necessarily four different people that Jesus is talking about, but he's talking about four different states or conditions of your heart that we may experience at any given time. Like, is it possible that you'll go into work and at 9 a.m., you're good soil, but by noon, you're getting a little rocky, And by 5 p.m., after 4 meetings that could have been wrapped up in an email, the thorns come out. Is it possible that in any given day, you might be all four soils at some point in time? So in the spirit of our four horsemen of European torture, I want to talk about four different conditions of our heart. Four distractions that all of us have likely experienced or maybe are experiencing them in our lives. And if we allow them to remain, if we allow the distractions to lead our lives, my burden, my conviction today is that the distractions will put a death to the destiny that God is wanting to birth in and through your life. But I believe today, if we could put distraction to death, that we could begin to walk in rhythm with who God is and who we were always meant to be and begin to be more rooted than you ever thought was possible. So I got four distractions. So if you don't like this sermon, at least you know when it's going to be over. Four distractions. Follow along. Number one is this: snatched. Everyone say snatched. The first distraction is what God wants to do in you gets snatched. Jesus says this. He says the seed fell on the footpath. The seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. Then the evil one comes and he what? Snatches. He snatches it away. He snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. He snatches away what God planted. He snatches away what God wanted to grow. He snatches away something that didn't have the time to fully evolve or become the fullness of what God intended because it was snatched before it could ever take root. Like for some of you, God will plant love in your heart today at Canvas, and before you finish your mimosa at brunch, the enemy will snatch that love. Or maybe tomorrow you're determined, I'm going to be patient tomorrow. I'm going to be kinder to my boss. I'm going to be kinder to my spouse. I'm going to be kinder to my kids. I'm going to be kinder to my roommates. But then you see them and snatched. Everything that God was wanting to do in you, the seed that he planted in you, was snatched before it could ever fully develop. You see, something I've learned in the 32 years I've walked this earth is that there's plenty of time between me getting an idea and me implementing that idea. It seems like there's plenty of time in between receiving the idea and implementing it for something to come in and snatch my focus. It's so frustrating. Like I'll be working on a sermon and I need to talk about Moses, so I go home and I sit down and I've been super distracted, but finally I'm like, I got it. I carved out time. I'm going to type out this sermon about Moses, so I sit down, open my computer, open up Pages, start typing, and I type Moses, and then autocorrect changes it to milk, and then I remember that I don't have milk in the fridge, and how am I going to feed my baby girl if I don't have milk? And then I'm at Walgreens 15 minutes later. I was supposed to be talking about Moses. Snatched. You ever been there? Or you're with your spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend and you're gonna stay home and watch Netflix. Not chill, just Netflix. Unless you're married, go ahead and chill. And you're sitting down, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask a millennial, they'll explain it. So you're sitting down to watch Netflix, and come on, has this ever happened to you? You're like, we're going to watch a movie, then you spend the next 2 hours deciding what movie you're going to watch, and by the time you decide what movie you're going to watch, it's midnight. You ain't got no time to watch a movie. Can I get a witness on this, anybody? It gets snatched. See, Jesus is saying there is an enemy, and one of his primary tactics is to snatch the good things that was planted before it can ever really get beneath the surface of your heart and grow. The farmer scattered the seed, but the birds began to circle, and it was snatched. And you should know that all throughout your week, God is scattering moments where you can extend hope to somebody, moments where you can rest and pray, moments where you can finally forgive and reconcile with that person you've been holding a grudge against, moments where you can begin to pursue your dream. The week is full of scattered moments that God has put in your life for a reason, but it's so easy that the birds come and start snatching away what God is wanting to grow. And you see, the sad thing about being snatched is that you never know what it could have been because you only saw it as a seed. Before it could grow, it was snatched. Things are important, then they get snatched by things that are just trivial. Things that are most important get snatched by things that truly only last for a moment, something you won't even remember in 2 years from that point in time, but we allow something that trivial to snatch what God was wanting to do in us and through us throughout the week. It can be as simple as, instead of engaging with those that you love most, we find ourselves using our thumb to scroll through the lives of people that we barely know, and we allow that moment to be snatched by something small and insignificant. See, this will even happen for some of you today. That as you leave here, there will be the birds that begin to circle around the good things that God has planted. And you see, if you're going to wage war on the enemy and not allow him to snatch the good things that God is planting in your life today, you got to kind of take the spirit of duck hunt on when you leave here, and you got to start going bird hunting a little bit. And every time you see the birds trying to snatch what God has taken you, you refuse to give them your focus. Because can I remind you today, no one takes your focus. It's only given your focus by you. You are in control. You are in control of your focus. The birds, man, they like to swarm, though. And Jesus says there's some people, they're distracted, and it's keeping them from ever taking root, and it's because the good things get snatched. But not only do they get snatched, they get scorched. Everyone say scorched. So you got snatched, and then you got scorched. Jesus says the seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy, but since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing God's word. This person is somebody who's operating in a more shallow, superficial sort of level. And Jesus says those who are only an inch deep, those who haven't really taken root, those who have no real depth in their heart, in their life, they'll get scorched as soon as things get hot. As soon as things get difficult. As soon as things are not linear or easy, people without depth will be blown to the left and blown to the right far away from where they were ever intended to be. These are the kind of people that they're busy, but they're barren. They're busy, but they're barren. They have the image of living a life, but really they're just existing. They have the image of productivity when in fact it's just busyness. Why? It has no root. And roots represent something. Roots represent commitment. Roots represent what you're tethered to. Roots represent what you're anchored to. Roots represent what you're tied to. Roots represent what you're tenacious about. And some of us never grow because we have no guiding principle or priorities that we have committed our life to. So as soon as a storm comes along in your life, you're blown in the totally different direction than you thought you would be because you have not been rooted in something deeper and stronger and greater than yourself. And it shows up in all kinds of ways, right? This lack of rootedness. Some people have been saying for 10 years, they're finally going to get in shape. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to lose this weight. I'm going to get healthier. But they have no root. And so you know what happens? Betty from HR, who you don't even know, has a birthday, and she brings in mini cupcakes. 10 minutes ago, you were looking on Instagram, searching up the hashtag Fitspiration because you wanted some inspiration for your day to stick to your plan and to eat your chicken and rice and cauliflower that you brought to the office, but mini cupcakes happen. And you don't even know Betty, but you know mini cupcakes. And so now you're taking a selfie with a mini cupcake, tagging it, hashtag Diet Starts Monday. Why? Because you got no roots. It's easy to talk about people, lack of commitment when it comes to health, but come on, we can talk about uncommitted church people. Should we go there? Let's get real, like some people, and I want to join a community group. I want people. I don't want to be alone. Yeah, Travis, yeah, I'm going. And they go to community group once in 8 weeks. I'm like, well, I was just a little tired on Tuesday. But the next week I ate a little salty lunch and I felt bloated. I couldn't go that day, Travis. And then we get an email like, I don't feel connected to anyone in my community group. And we're like, have you been to your community group? And they're like, well, I went once in the last 8 weeks. And we're like, well, ... Maybe that's why you don't feel connected. Why is it so easy to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out? It's easy when you don't have roots to something deeper or greater than yourself. We could apply this to how some people date. Come on, man. I don't know if any of y'all are going to come back now. Like we could talk about this and how some people date. Some of you are like, I'm done dating crazy people. There's a lot of them in San Francisco. Can I get a witness? Come on. And you're like, man, my life looks like Bachelor in Paradise and I'm over it. I'm canceling the show. I'm done dating crazy people. I'm done swiping. I am just going to wait for the right man, the right woman. I'm going to wait for the right person that loves Jesus. I'm not going to force it anymore. They need to be able to have a job for more than a week. They need to be off their mama's couch. They need to be able to have some consistency. I'm determined. I'm never going to date somebody, some crazy person like I used to date before. But then you're serving on Next Step because you love to serve. And you're the first point of contact, and you know that's a beautiful thing because all of a sudden, after that big spiel about how you're never going to date and you're just not going to go after any crazy people, he arrives. He shows up. And he gets off his motorcycle, his hair blowing in the wind, and he comes over to you and you say hello, and he says, hello, I am Alessandro.
When a man loves a woman,
He's Italian.
Can't keep his mind on
He wears leather
nothing
jackets.
else.
Woo!
He trade the world.
He can cook me pizza any day. But then, we can turn down the music real quick.
He can't see it.
But then you get to know Alessandro. And you come to realize that Alessandro can't keep a job. Alessandro doesn't love Jesus. Alessandro has no commitment. Alessandro is kind of a playboy. Alessandro doesn't even make that good of a pizza. And all your friends and family, people who know you and love you the most, they're saying, don't go with Alessandro. And you're like, but you don't know him like I do. And now everything goes out the window. Why is it so easy to get stuck with That same story again and again and again. Jesus says it's because you get distracted because you've got no roots. That you've not committed to something deeper, greater, and stronger than yourself. And so as soon as things get a little difficult, everything that you said you were going to do goes out the window. He says there's this enemy. He would love nothing more than to scorch what God wanted to do in and through your life. Snatched, scorched. The next one is suffocated. Suffocated. Snatched, scorched. The third thing, it's suffocated. Jesus says this. He says the seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. Suffocated. Now I need you to see something. It doesn't say that it was the responsibilities of this life, but Jesus says it was the worries of this life. You see, some of us are not distracted by the things that are happening in our lives. You are distracted by your interpretation of the things that are happening in your lives. That you're not distracted by things that are actually happening in your life. You're distracted by the things that might or might not happen in your life a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. And man, if I were the devil, this would be my trick. Because that means I could destroy you without doing anything to you. Nothing, I don't need to make anything happen to you. All I need to do is convince you that something might happen to you. And before you know it, the good things that God is wanting to do gets choked. You start to suffocate on fear, suffocate on worry. See, Jesus says there's an enemy, and his trick is through the power of autosuggestion. He'll get you worried about something, what might happen one day, in order to choke the life out of this day, because that's how worry works. You know that, right? Worry will never resolve tomorrow's fear, but it will always remove today's peace. Worry will never resolve tomorrow's fears, but it will always, always, always remove today's peace. I remember I was so worried before launching this church. There were so many moments in the first couple years that I spent nights up every night worried about what was happening. I wish I could stand up here and say that wasn't the case. I wish I could be like, I've never feared ever. I am such a holy person. That's not true. I feared God. I feared what was happening many times, fearing that God had abandoned me, feared that God wasn't going to act in time. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like God wasn't on time, that he was running late, that he didn't even care? I remember one time we had this person when we were at Presidio Theater. They hated us and would call the police on us each and every Sunday. We got to know the police so good here in San Francisco because they came each and every week. Pat knows what I'm talking about. He was like I'm like, Pat, you're a lawyer, go deal with this. And we tried to talk to this person, and we said, hey, how can we work this out? How can we resolve this? And he said, you could just move away. I was like, well, I'm not really down for that one, but like, can we do like plan B? Is there a good plan B? He's like, no, I just want you gone. And I would wrestle with fear again and again that we were going to get kicked out of Presidio Theater. We were never going to have a place to gather again. I was going to have to pack up my family and go back to Arizona and sell jeans at American Eagle. And then one day I was going to retire in a van down by the river selling stamps out of the back of it. Like, I was so scared. Your mind does crazy things. It creates crazy scenarios. I was afraid, and it was like choking. Have you ever felt like you were choking on fear? Like you just couldn't breathe in it? It reminds me of a quote by Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. Some of you are choking, and it's not because of what is happening. It's because of what you think might happen in your life. And it's not just the worries that can choke us, but Jesus actually says it's also the deceitfulness or the lure of wealth that can choke the life out that God is wanting to bring about in our lives. The deceitfulness of wealth, the lure of wealth. Now, it's easy for us to breeze past this verse and be like, well, I ain't rich. I literally live in a closet. My bed fits in there. I got a little nightstand, but I'm paying $1,200 for a closet. And so you're like, you can read that and be like, well, I ain't rich, so this doesn't apply to me. That applies to Mark Cuban and Mark Zuckerberg and all those rich, fancy pants Mark guys, right? Like, that applies to them, but not to me. But the scripture doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. And I don't know about you, but I've met plenty of people who don't have a lot of money who are far more obsessed about having a lot of money than those who do have a lot of money. I've never met a person possessed by a demon, but I've met plenty of people possessed by possessions. See, there's nothing wrong with having stuff. It's when stuff has you that it becomes problematic. That Jesus says it begins to choke the life that he wants to birth in and through you. And so the first is snatched, the second is scorched, the third distraction is suffocated. I said there were four, but in the story of Jesus in Matthew chapter 13, 1 through 9, he ends with the good soil, so that can't be the distraction. And so if you're going to see the fourth distraction, you need to go to the parable after the parable. Jesus tells a parable after the parable, but he's still talking about what we're talking about today. Jesus says this, he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. Can I just pause for a second and remind you that Jesus just said it was good seed. There's nothing wrong with the seed. The seed is created to do exactly what it was designed to do, to grow and to flourish. And there's something I need you to know today, that you are God's masterpiece and you were created long ago for the good things that God planned for you, that you're not a mistake, that you're not an accident. There may be accidental parents, but there are no accidental children. I believe each and every human being on this earth is filled with dignity, purpose, and promise because God does not make mistakes, not one, including you. You are good seed. You're good seed. You see, the problem wasn't that the seed was bad. The problem was the soil was bad. Can I remind you today that if you're facing difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, the enemy would love nothing other than to get you to question your identity and your worth and your value. But perhaps what the real issue is not that you're bad seed, but that you have some bad soil. Like in your Bible, this might be called the parable of the sower, but I don't think that's accurate. This is more likely the parable of the soil. This is the parable of the soil. The person next to you very well may have more distractions than you are carrying with you, but they're dealing with it better. It's not because they're a better person than you. It's probably because they have better soil that they're working with. And so in verse 25, he says, but while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed seeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. You got snatched, scorched, suffocated, and here's the fourth and final distraction, sabotaged. Sabotage. You have a destiny. I don't know if anyone has told you that. Maybe life has beat it out of you and you're now realizing it, but let me remind you today, you have a great destiny, things that you are wired to do. But the scriptures and Jesus in particularly is abundantly clear that although you have a destiny, you also have an enemy that would love nothing other than to wreck your destiny. That would love nothing other than to ruin what good things God wants to do in and through you. And the way that he does this is he catches you when you're sleeping. He catches you when you're sleeping, and what Jesus says is he plants weeds among the wheat. It's a sabotage. He likes to plant distractions among your destiny. While they were sleeping, the enemy sowed weeds among the wheat. And so it's important to understand the enemy cannot take away your destiny, but he can plant something next to it that would distract you from seeing your destiny. He can't touch your destiny. He can't take it away unless you give it to him. But what he often does is plant something near your destiny that will get you distracted. And so God is wanting to plant love in you, but the enemy plants weeds of bitterness against those who hurt you because your enemy can't take your destiny, but he can convince you that love isn't worth the risk being hurt again. So you shell up and you keep people at a distance and keep your destiny at a distance because the enemy, what Jesus says, the enemy is distracted. He's put weeds among the wheat. God is wanting to plant healing in you, but the enemy plants weeds of fear that you will never break through, you'll never overcome, you'll never be victorious. He can't take away your healing, but he can get you to think more about your hurt than God's healing. God wants you to have a healthy marriage. Now the enemy can't make you leave your partner, but he can attempt to get you to think about what it would be like if you did. He plants weeds among the wheat. And this is why we got to stay awake, church. This is why we got to stay awake, because the enemy loves catching us when we're sleeping. And if you think I'm talking about literal sleep and catch up, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a spiritual state of sleepiness, a spiritual state of fatigue, where you've checked out, you've disconnected. See, it's in those moments that we become the prime candidate for the enemy to come in and wreck your field. He would love nothing more than to wreck your field, to wreck your family, to wreck your healing, to wreck your future, to wreck your passion, to wreck your relationships. And this is why we need to stay awake. This is why we need to stay awake, because if not, Jesus says there is an enemy who is after your destiny, and he will plant weeds among the wheat right under your nose. Snatched, scorched, suffocated, sabotaged. I wonder how many of us are distracted today. Distracted, and it's the thing that's keeping you from being rooted in your relationship with Jesus the way you were always created to be. Maybe this is why Paul prays in Ephesians 3:14-19 that we would be rooted in love, that we would be rooted in God, because he knew there was a very real enemy that was after your heart, that was after your destiny, that was after your future. And Paul says, man, I'm just getting on my knees and I'm just praying for you. I'm praying, church, that you would understand that if you are asleep, if you allow yourself to remain distracted, that the very things that God is planting will never grow, they will never flourish, they will never come to pass. And it breaks Paul's heart, but even more, it breaks the heart of God. And so Paul prays to God, and he prays that the people would be rooted and established in the love of God. Are you rooted today? Are you awake today? Or are you distracted? And you see, there's one way that we can wage war on the distractions that the enemy brings our way. It's another S. Are you ready? He distracts us by snatching what God plants. He distracts us by scorching what God plants. He distracts us by suffocating what God is wanting to do. He distracts us through sabotage. But you want to know how we fight back? It's one word. It's surrender. It's surrender to the one who is greater, to the one who's deeper, to the one who's able, to the one who's immeasurably more than you could ever hope for or ask for or imagine. He says if you will just surrender, if you will just root yourself in the love of God, then you will know the complete life that God has created for you. And so my prayer today for you is that you would declare today, I'm done being snatched. I'm done being scorched. I'm done being suffocated, and I'm done with the sabotage, because right now I'm waging war on distraction. I'm putting a death to distraction before distraction puts a death to my destiny, and I'm going to surrender to one who's greater, to one who's deeper, to one who's stronger, to one whose source is able to last the entirety of my life. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to surrender, and I pray that this would be a year marked with great surrender as we as a church and you individually root ourselves in Jesus. Can we pray? Father?
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's teaching. You know, the Canvas vision is all about pointing creatives to their creator, that they would become fully alive followers of Jesus. And that vision is committed to you. And we want to invite you to be committed to that vision through your generosity. You can do that by setting up a one-time gift or recurring donations at canvas-sf.com, or even better, by downloading the Canvas app. Church, we love you, and we believe that the absolute best days are yet to come.